Now, we had a discussion, me and Miss Vickers, and we thought, shall we talk about character, setting, resolution? Is it confusing? Now, what do you think?
Character.
I think that limits you a little bit. So I think the first thing I'm going to do with mine is I'm going to relabel them. I'm just going to give them numbers.
If students can see and understand how what they do in interventions connects to what they do in lessons, then they're going to be in a better place than if this isn't clear to them. Again, we can see the importance of effective deployment. It's the bedrock on which linking learning rests. Teachers and TAs need time in which they can liaise.
Could you outline for us how you ensure that learning is linked between the interventions that happen and the wider classroom teaching?
I think there are two strong elements to this. The way to ensure it links is through the structured intervention emerging from the assessments initially, so that the teacher and teaching assistant or the phase have looked at what the gaps are within learning, because then the teacher is directing already what that intervention would need to be. They have input into the planning of that and the delivery of that. So that's automatically going to link because they're actually focusing on the right thing and the gap that needs to be filled. At the heart of that's got to be about the child making the link. So if the child is going to continue to do their great sentence punctuation that they've been doing in an intervention in the classroom, they've got to understand how that can link to their work. They can only do that if the teacher fully knows what's being taken place outside. But at the heart, it is about the child being able to make the link for themselves. So the teacher can, within any session within the class, refer to that when you've been working with your teaching assistant, remember what you've been working on, whether that's linked to grammar or whether that's a maths concept, that's very teacher-led, so they know absolutely and can bring that back into the work.
Let's go through the story.
Which side is this part and which side is the part?
That's a really good question, because on the other side of the wall, we've got on the other side of the wall, Oh, go on, Siraj, see if you can get a smiley.
More influent city.
Not influence, it's affluent, more affluent.
Or the rich.
The rich.
Or child complex.
Exactly.
As a teacher, how do you make sure that what happens in those interventions, how do you get access to that information?
Well, the interventions are planned between teachers and teaching assistants, so it's not something that's just the teacher's responsibility, and it's also not something that's kind of just given as this, you're doing an intervention in maths this afternoon. We sit down together after lessons and we discuss kind of like what gaps we might have spotted, any misconceptions that are developing, or even where we can identify that pre-teach will be necessary. Then we'll sit down, work out what the intervention's going to look like, and then the teaching assistant will deliver that. And it's really good, again, with the shared vocabulary that we've got in our school. We know we're using the same vocabulary, we know we're using the same methods because we've really talked it through. And then afterwards, when the teaching assistant comes to talk to me about how the intervention's gone, to be able to explain it, based on the objectives that we set together. So he'll know what it would have looked like for children to achieve that, and we'll have that shared understanding. But constant communication. After school every day, we do have meetings with our teaching assistants, even 5 or 10 minutes. Just to sit down and go through things like that. So we're both on the same wavelength all the time, really.
So, Rob, you do a number of interventions.
Yeah.
And how do you ensure that what happens in those interventions is linked back to the classroom and the class teacher?
On one day, the teacher might be doing the intervention and we'd be taking the class. On the other day, we might be doing the intervention and they take the class. So it focuses on the children who didn't really achieve the learning objective in the morning. But we take those children and then not go over the same things again, but take it back a level, so take it back to the step that they were obviously missing in order to not get this deeper level of understanding. So it has to be quite linked to the learning in the morning because it's following up. They're all rapid interventions, so they have to take place in 15 minutes and no longer. In Key Stage 2, we record them in the same books that we did the morning's learning in, so the child would have some kind of assessment code to say they didn't achieve the learning objective, and then you'd write RI in it, and you'd do the rapid intervention in the afternoon. So that when you're looking through the evidence of the learning, it's usually a photograph or a drawing or something, kind of not pages and pages of correct sums after some incorrect ones. And also the interesting thing about the way we're doing it at the moment, this is particularly in maths, is that they're not the same kids. You would expect them to be the same children every day who have a little bit of extra maths, but it's not. It's a kind of a broad range of the class. You're going to write on your own. If you want to draw any of the shacks, you can. We're looking for descriptions of what your life in the favela is like. Okay? Any questions?
No.
Let's go.
As we draw our analysis of the 7 recommendations to a close, one thing stands out above all else. The decisions a school makes about deployment influence what TAs can do. They influence the scope of what is possible and, in turn, and just as we've seen in the example of linking learning, they ultimately impact on students.